and she serves there as the Assistant Executive Director of Policy, Planning, and Research for post-secondary completion. Her role with, is it THEC? Is that what they say? Okay, her role with THEC involves a focus specifically on increasing educational attainment for adults in Tennessee, including those with some college and no degree. We know something about those students here in Michigan. We have 1.2 million of those students in our state. So we will be very interested in hearing about all of the different initiatives, including her work on the Drive to 55 initiatives, Tennessee Reconnect, which we're going to get to hear a lot about this morning. Jessica has a rich history. She served 6 years as a policy analyst for the Offices of Research and Education Accountability, a division in the Tennessee State Comptroller's Office. She was also a policy advisor for the former Governor Phil Bredesen. Okay, great. Making sure I'm getting all the Tennessee lingo down here. And she has a BA and an MA from the George Washington University. And as a graduate of the Ohio State University, I appreciate that "the" is in the title for the George Washington University. I do want to mention also, just so you don't think she's weird, she is wearing 2 microphones today because we're recording the session. So one of those mics will capture the recording and one of them will project to the audience. Without any further ado, thank you for joining us, Jessica. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me? Yes, excellent. Okay, I kind of feel like the bionic woman today. So this is my first time to Lansing, and the weather is beautiful. So thanks for that. No, I'm really glad to be here, and I want to thank all of you for joining me today in this spotlight session to talk about what Tennessee is doing to re-engage adult learners. Now, admittedly, ours is a state program, but there are a lot of efforts and programs that we've initiated and ways in which we've initiated them that I think are transferable and translatable to other states and systems and institutions. So today I'm going to talk about our state goal, our vision, some of the guiding strategies that we use, and the programs we've developed. And then I'm going to talk about the learning that we've really had from this. So Tennessee Reconnect is the name of our adult learner initiative in Tennessee. But to understand Tennessee Reconnect, you really need to understand the Drive to 55. Now, the Drive to 55 is our state's goal to equip 55% of Tennesseans with a college degree or certificate by 2025. So why 55%? Because Georgetown Center on Education and the Workforce told us that by 2025, 55% of jobs in Tennessee are going to require some form of post-secondary education. So the Drive to 55 is not just an educational attainment initiative, it's also a workforce development and economic development initiative. And our governor, Governor Haslam, has done a really great job pulling the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, the systems, the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, the Department of Economic and Community Development, Department of Human Services, and our K-12 system together around the Drive to 55. Drive to 55 has kind of 4 large components. Getting students ready for college, getting them in by reducing barriers, getting them out to help with completion, and reconnecting adults. And all of this needs to be aligned with workforce needs. The reconnecting adults piece is really, really important because we actually can't achieve our 55% goal without them, without focusing on them and providing them more support. We need to get 871,000 credentials into the hands of people who don't currently have them by 2025. In that same period of time, though, we're only expecting 645,000 Tennessee high school graduates. So if every Tennessee high school graduate went to college and graduated from college, we would still have a gap. You don't have to see these numbers. Just the blue line is our needed growth. The orange line is our expected natural growth. So taking into account lots of different factors, we still have a gap. It's about 77,000 credentials. And we think we can bridge that gap by focusing on adults. So we have 900,000 in Tennessee with some college, no degree. We have 110,000 that are halfway to a degree. And we have 25,000 that have numerically the right number of credits to graduate with an associate's or a bachelor's degree, but they're not currently enrolled and they don't have a degree. And it's most likely that they have the wrong combination of credits. But we feel that this group of 25,000 probably a pretty big majority are within a semester of graduating. So Tennessee Reconnect was created in response to our Drive to 55 goal, the data that we have, the recognition that adults are really important to meeting our numbers. And it really encompasses all of the adult learner initiatives within the Drive to 55. So Tennessee Reconnect is going to help meet our goal, but there's the human element as well. We want to give adults an opportunity to finish something that they started. We want to give them the opportunity to be a role model for their kids, to make their parents proud, their family and friends proud, to broaden their career opportunities, and we hope to change their life in a positive way. So the Drive to 55, Tennessee Reconnect, gave us an opportunity at the Higher Education Commission to try to design something that was holistic and kept the student in mind. So as we were sort of developing the ideas around Tennessee Reconnect, we started by thinking about stakeholders. And of course, students are our number one stakeholder. Institutions, obviously, are incredibly important to this conversation, as well as our employers, workforce agencies, and communities themselves. We had a goal of 55%, but our vision was that post-secondary education could be a viable option for any adult who wanted to access it. That we would work with institutions to continue to help them streamline processes, and that we would have a higher education system that was more responsive, flexible, and supportive for adult learners. And then we had to think about our role. So the Tennessee Higher Education Commission is a coordinating board. We're not a governing board. There are certain things we can do and certain things we cannot do. What we can do is we can help craft policy. We can help change policy. We can partner with institutions and with communities, and we can help build capacity at the institutional level and at the community level. So if we think about these as lenses, we developed our guiding strategies based off of that. First is research and building the policy framework. We have data. We need to use it to influence policy that can really help adult learners. We also need to collect more data, and we need to connect data sources together. We need to reach out to adults and let them know what their options and their opportunities are and where they can find support. If we get as many adults to come back as we hope, we need to ensure that our institutions have the capacity, really, to help them to and through. We need to think about new ways to partner with employers and workforce agencies because they have a vested interest in what happens here and in our success. And then finally, the success of our state goal is going to live or die at the community level. So the communities that own it and that engage with it are going to be successful, and they're going to help our state be successful. So as a higher education coordinating board, we needed to think about a new and innovative way to partner with our Tennessee communities. So the guiding strategies led to the development of our programs. And there are several of them. I'll go through them. But we think it's kind of helpful to illustrate how we think an adult learner experience, or hope that an adult learner experiences the programs. So you can see that we do intentionally try to make it holistic. So this is Jan. You'll see Jan a couple more times today. Early this year, Jan started seeing television commercials, hearing radio ads, seeing billboards, digital marketing, encouraging her to reconnect, to complete a degree. If Jan happened to be halfway to a degree, her former institution sent her a postcard encouraging her to reconnect with them. She may have received a follow-up phone call or email as well, and she may have attended a community event which gave her information about going back to college. What we wanted her to do at the very basic level was visit an institution website and find out more about it, or visit our state tnreconnect.gov website. What we really wanted her to do was talk to a real person, because there's no substitute for human interaction when someone's making a big decision like this. We wanted her to re-enroll. And once she got back to campus, we wanted her to have a different experience than she may have had the first time. We wanted her to see a clear path to a degree, to understand how her academic pursuits align to career opportunities, how she could pay for college, how she could shorten her time to degree with accelerated programs or prior learning assessment. We wanted her to connect to a peer group, so she knew that she wasn't the only one on campus that looked like she did, and that she always had someone to talk to from the time she thought about going back to college all the way through until she graduated. And we wanted Jan to graduate, so everything here is Tennessee Reconnect. Her life cycle is Tennessee Reconnect. And there are programs that feed each step of this life cycle. And I'm about to go into those programs right now, and I'm going to start with those that exist really before she re-enrolls. And at the state and the institution and the community level, we have marketing and outreach, information provision and support, and institution-neutral advising. And as I mentioned, these are happening at the state, the college, and the community levels. Reconnect and Complete is our marketing and outreach. tnreconnect.gov is intended to be a one-stop shop adult learner portal. And the Tennessee Reconnect community effort is our community-owned effort to support residents in the community to go back to college and complete. I'm going to talk about Reconnect and Complete and reconnect.gov. I'm going to save the Tennessee Reconnect community effort for a few minutes down the road because it actually, I think, deserves a little more focus. Reconnect and Complete has a statewide component and an institutional outreach component. Between January 11th and the end of March, we, as I mentioned, television commercials, radio ads, billboards. The goal was to push adults to the tnreconnect.gov website to get them to connect to an institution. When they got onto the website, this interest form popped up, and they were able to enter their name and contact information and up to 3 institutions they were interested in. Or they could close it out, they didn't have to fill it out. But in that amount of time, there were 5,000 interest forms submitted. We tracked it through Google Analytics. 2,800 accounts have been created on the website. Since launch, we've had 440,000 page views and 81,000 unique visitors. The institutional outreach piece, this is going to sound very familiar to some of you. We asked the institutions to pull lists of their students who hadn't completed but had earned half of the credits to a degree. We then ran them against our student information system, National Student Clearinghouse. We received a list back of 110,000, that's where we get our 50%, that had not completed a degree, but we're halfway there. That's where we get our 25,000 number 2. We have 25,000 with 120 credits to a bachelor's degree or 60 to an associate's. We then contracted with a third-party vendor that actually works on outreach to alumni, and they appended contact information to about half of those. We then gave those lists back to the institutions for outreach. This was done in the image of Project Win-Win. It is not at all to the level of Project Win-Win. It does not go to the depth of Project Win-Win. But it was something that inspired an outreach, at least, that was a little more targeted. We then pulled together 39 colleges and universities to talk through market research, focus group research, academic research, and then we shared best practices among colleges. And then institutional teams got together during the day to do some strategic planning for outreach and for intake of those adults. We provided them some resources as well. Then we produced a postcard. These are actual Tennessee adults. The college's contact information is on the back, and then the colleges sent them out. Obviously, we wanted them to connect with their former students. So, any of you who have done this before probably know what I'm going to say here. The 39 institutions sent us tracking reports. The primary outreach for the postcards was not very fruitful. Some of the addresses were not available, some were incorrect, people didn't respond. The secondary outreach reached more people. usually through the email and the web-based referral process. Phone numbers were a lot like snail mail addresses in that they often change or they're incorrect. So what did we learn? A lot of the institutions told us that the lists that we gave back to them were incorrect and that they needed to rerun them themselves. So there were a couple things here. First, we should have been more nimble. We should have gotten those lists, appended the contact information, and done the market research, or I'm sorry, the market outreach right away. Unfortunately, there was lag time between each step. So that was not, it was something that we learned. It was a mistake really on our part. We also learned that the institutions had the capability, a lot of the institutions had the capability to do this already. Some of them were, and were doing it really successfully. So I think that was a learning too that we had. And finally, if we were to do this again, we would do it on a smaller scale, but in a more focused way, more like Project Win-Win, frankly. tnreconnect.gov website has tools and information. It's supposed to be one place for adults to go to answer general questions about going back to school or going for the first time. We have profiles of all of our institutions with contact information at different levels, checklists for going back to school, financial aid information, prior learning assessment information. There are tools on the website that allow a student to input their past academic course history and get back a list of institutions and programs into which those credits can transfer. We have a time to degree calculator and a cost to completion calculator too. Institutions still have the capability to get referrals from the website for students. Our communities do as well, and I'll talk about that when I talk about the Tennessee Reconnect communities. It's just a screenshot of the homepage. The first thing that someone sees is the ability to choose a profile. Either they're going back, they're going for the first time, or they're a veteran or service member. So after Jan re-enrolls, we have several things that are intended to reduce barriers for her or provide her support. Building institutional capacity, shortening time to degree, reducing financial barriers, and providing institution-neutral advising and support, again, at the state college and the community levels. Ready to Reconnect is our institutional mini-grant program. TimeWise Tennessee is our state branding of prior learning assessment. The community college and TCAT Reconnect grants are last dollar scholarships. And again, the Tennessee Reconnect community effort plays in here. So with the Ready to Reconnect grant, THEC offered a call for proposals in 2015 for institutions to create programs to support adult student retention and completion. In order to apply for the grant, they had to go through the adult learning focused institution process that's available through the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning. And what that consists of is an adult learner inventory and an institutional self-assessment by faculty and administration. The results of those two are put together and evaluated in 9 areas, and they happen to be CALE's 9 principles of effectiveness in serving adult learners. So the institution gets back a report, and these 9 areas, each of the 9 areas is identified as an area of strength, a challenge area, or a neutral area. So what we wanted the institutions to do was propose something that would address a challenge area on campus. 28 institutions completed the ALFI and 17 received grants. So none of the proposals were the same, and we didn't expect them to be because we wanted the institutions to customize their strategies to their own challenges. Some of them shared common elements, and I will say this, the program actually ended the end of August and the final reports are due today, so we'll get a better sense of really the success or what may have worked, what may not have worked, what they would do differently. We're also hoping to convene the institutions to share these best practices or promising practices as well. There was an interest in connecting adults to their peers and peer mentoring type of relationships, basic computer skills, helping them understand financial aid processes, enrollment processes. Faculty and staff development was something that a couple of institutions chose to do, expanding multiple methods of instruction, expanding credit for prior learning. And then we had a lot of institutions that designated a person or hired a person, whether it was an institutional contact or an adult student success coach. And we had one institution that did develop an evening accelerated hybrid completion mapped guided pathway. So I'm really interested to see kind of what came out of this in particular. Time-wise TN. I'm sure everyone in the room is familiar with prior learning assessment and credit for prior learning, I'm assuming. So all of our Tennessee institutions have some way to evaluate learning that occurs outside the classroom for academic credit. They all do. They all call it something different. So it's PLA, it's credit for prior learning, it's experiential learning credit. We have institutions that have their own branded name for it, but they don't always advertise it very well. So adults don't always know it exists. So what we did is we created a brand for the sole purpose of giving an adult a way to ask for it on campus. The programs look different across the entire systems, all the systems, but the brand is for the student, not necessarily for the institution. So even though the programs and the practices, the offerings might look different, we thought there was an opportunity to encourage institutions to market it more and to perhaps even expand the offering. So we created some tools that institutions could use, some out of the box, PLA advisor guide, PLA student checklist, access to market research that we had contracted to have done. We produced a PLA orientation video that institutions could put on their website. We interviewed students that had gone through PLA. We compiled their quotes, and we also gave all of that to the institutions. We created a an internal PLA communication plan and slides so that if they wanted to share that among staff and faculty, that there was a ready-made tool that they could use. We also developed customizable tools, a brochure, logos, institutional PLA guide templates so they could put all of their practices really in one place to share with students. And staff and faculty training slides, and these were for new staff and new faculty coming into the institution to let them know that PLA existed so that if a student asked for it, they would know the person at the institution or the people at the institution to direct them to, just so that they knew who was really sort of focusing on this. We also developed some rubrics for institutions to do some self-assessment if they chose in 4 areas. How the institution was addressing faculty concerns around prior learning assessment, how they were aligning campus policies to PLA standards. We have statewide PLA standards. The systems, one of the systems in particular, has adopted the standards as policy, as system policy. So it was a way for the campus to see if they were aligning with the PLA guidelines at the system level. Increasing student demand and integrating PLA as a default option. This last point is if an adult comes to you and you're helping them develop their path through college, that you consider prior learning assessment as part of that path. The Community College Reconnect Grant and the TCAT Reconnect Grant, these are last dollar scholarships. They are applied after all other federal, state, and gift aid is applied. It covers tuition and fees, but not books and supplies. The TCAT Reconnect Grant is a permanent program. This allows an adult to attend a Tennessee College of Applied Technology tuition-free. The eligibility requirements are not very stringent. I do want to call your attention to the bullet point that says full-time enrollment is necessary. We have 27 Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. They all have full-time programs. They're cohort block scheduled programs that run 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., 5 days a week. So asking someone to attend full-time is not any different than how the whole system works really within the TCATs. The program started last year. 1,650 students have gotten the grant, and it's cost the state about $1.5 million. The Community College Reconnect Grant Program is a pilot program. The eligibility requirements, I think, are a little more stringent. It requires a student to have 30 credits towards a degree, and requires an adult learner to enroll 9 hours a semester. Many adults have to enroll part-time, and this is more than part-time, so this cuts out some adults right away. If this becomes a permanent program, we're hoping to see some changes in these eligibility requirements. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the Tennessee Reconnect community effort. Before I do that, does anybody have any questions on what I have just talked about? No? Okay. The Tennessee Reconnect community program, I think, is pretty comprehensive and actually touches Jan throughout all the steps on the life cycle, which is why I wanted to pull this one out in particular. Our Tennessee Reconnect communities, they're locally based collaboratives, and they're focused on engaging adults with high-touch advising and support services so that they can graduate with a credential. This is our state. We have 8 Tennessee Reconnect communities. As you can see, these are multi-county regions, except for Shelby County, which is where Memphis is. We chose these communities based on an RFP process. What they needed to show us was their willingness to do this, and that they had a lot of local partnerships already developed or ready to go. They also defined themselves. We thought that they probably knew their community better than we did, so we left the county designations up to them. We launched 3 in March, and we will launch 5 in November. So once the communities are launched in November, they will serve 66 of our 95 counties. We hope that by this time next year, we will have all 95 counties covered. So we're using a model that was pioneered by the Graduate Network out of Philadelphia. They have 21 sites around the country. Tennessee is going to be the first to scale this model statewide. Every Tennessee Reconnect community has a lead organization, a guiding team, and a director. These individuals work within the community to build partnerships with local colleges and universities, with employers, chambers of commerce, workforce agencies, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and local governments where they feel like that's necessary. They're trying to bring people around a common goal of increasing educational attainment in their area. And the partners are really, really very necessary in order to get the word out and in order to get people to support it and have some long-term sustainability. They are reaching out in a variety of ways. So when you want to talk to a high school student about going to college, you go to a high school and you talk to them about going to college. Adults are not a captive audience. They're everywhere. So our Tennessee Reconnect community staff try to be everywhere. They, of course, leverage local media. They have a lot of events. They partner on a lot of events. They attend festivals and fairs. They're at the shopping mall. They're at church after service on Sunday. They're at shift change. They really try to be all over the place so that people know that they exist and that those services are free and they're available. And what are they offering? So the Tennessee Reconnect advisors are professional advisors, and they provide institution-neutral advising and support for adults to and through college. So what does that really look like? So Jan's back. This is her Reconnect advisor. His name's Andy. And Andy sits down with Jan, and they explore her options. We're talking about looking at schools, looking at programs, looking at the jobs that are available in her community and how they connect to programs that are available as well. She's looking at ways to pay for college, and he's doing some counseling too, because as you know, adults, when they think about coming back to college, have a lot of fears. they have a lot of doubts. So Andy's helping her do some myth busting, but also identifying the real challenges and helping her develop some strategies around those challenges. And she will complete really a college success plan up to enrollment and from enrollment all the way to graduation. She's going to set goals. He's going to go sort of through a college 101 with her. This might be a seminar, this might be one-on-one coaching, but it's so that she can learn to navigate the admissions and enrollment processes, which can be incredibly complicated. She's also going to develop strategies to balance work life and school. He's going to connect her to resources to brush up on study skills. He's also going to prompt her and help her locate some of those important documents like past transcripts, immunization records, loan documents. It's going to help her fill out a FAFSA if she needs help. And throughout this whole process, she's going to run up against challenges and obstacles. So he's going to help her get the resources she needs to overcome those obstacles so she doesn't stop before she even starts again. And he's going to nudge her to apply. He's helping her, he's empowering her throughout this process. He's not doing it for her, but he's providing her the resources she needs to do it. Now, once Jan has applied and been accepted, he's going to nudge her. He's going to say, you really need to meet with your academic advisor at the college. You need to make sure that you've registered for classes, that you have your books and supplies, that you know where to park. And I haven't mentioned this before, but Andy, part of his job is to build relationships with staff at the local college. So he's going to call up somebody he knows. He's going to say, Paul, Jan is really excited. She's coming to your college. Here are a couple of her issues that she has problems with. Let her know that you're there and that you're somebody who can connect with her and help her out a little bit too. And then I will say, Andy and Paul will continue to communicate while Jan is enrolled so that they're trying to provide some wraparound services for her. Throughout the time she's enrolled, Andy is going to reach out to her before midterms, before finals, and at any other point, because he knows Jan now, at any other point that he thinks that Jan is having some trouble or struggling. And they're going to revisit that college success plan and they're going to adjust it as necessary. The Reconnect community's partnerships are really part of the DNA. They can't do it without the partnerships. And I'm going to talk about 3 types of partnerships that I think will illustrate the model a little bit better. So the college and Reconnect community partnership is probably the most important partnership. There's, as I mentioned, a lot of communication between that Reconnect advisor and the advisor at the institution. Some of our colleges have partnered immediately. They've gotten on board. They think it's a great idea. Some of our colleges have not. They think that it might be duplicative of the services they already offer. So what then is the benefit of one of our colleges partnering with our Reconnect communities? All of our colleges are very involved in a completion agenda. They have completion goals. The Reconnect community, their main purpose is to increase educational attainment in the community. So their goals are aligning. They can help each other out. As you notice, there's a lot of pre-enrollment counseling that happens at the Reconnect community level. Once that reconnector gets to the door of a college, they have chosen their best fit institution, or we hope their best fit institution. They have things taken care of. They have their paperwork, they're ready to go, and they understand better how to navigate those processes around the college. Because the Reconnect communities are reaching out in a variety of ways, they may be reaching out to prospective students that the college hasn't yet been able to reach out to. Every time our communities do an event or produce materials, all of the partner college logos are on those materials. Again, trying to get the word out about the institution to many different avenues. Employers are Reconnect community partners as well. And so this can also provide a way for colleges to really get to know employers and partner with employers that they may not currently be partnering with. They have access to undecided prospective adult learners. We have a system that's a variation of Salesforce where the Reconnect advisor tracks the movement of the student and sort of what interventions have happened. That partner institution has access to that too because they're helping the students along the way as well. So they can do some outreach to undecided prospective adult learners. Undecided in institutions. And then, of course, the fact that they can participate in a community engagement process that really brings people together to make a lasting change in the region. So what does the college contribute? What is the college asked to do? The very basic level, they're providing information about the programs and the supports they offer. And they have provided contact information for key individuals. They can also designate an institutional point person. As I mentioned, every TRC has a guiding team. Many of those guiding teams have institutional representatives on them, so they're involved in strategic planning. They can provide information about the Reconnect services to their prospective students and currently enrolled students as well. And they can provide volunteer advising a few hours a month. So some of the colleges do that, some do not. Employers are another really important partner. There are many ways that a Reconnect community can work with employers. They can provide workshops and college fairs at employers' locations. They can develop resource centers for the employees that work there. They can also work one-on-one with individual employees, just as they do with any other population within the region. They can connect them to adult-friendly institutions, talk to them about prior learning assessment opportunities connected with the training that they've received at their job. And then they can work with employers to survey their employees, to ask about their post-secondary goals and what their career aspirations are. They can report to employers about the progress of the employees that are going through the Reconnect services. And if the employer so chooses, they can talk to them about education benefits that the employer could offer that could benefit the employer's bottom line. And then finally, we at the state level are providing technical assistance to the communities and startup funds, but we're also developing partnerships that we hope will benefit the communities themselves. We have technical assistance partnerships, for example. This is a Reconnect ambassador partnership that I want to talk about. Reconnect ambassadors are people in the community who can identify potential reconnectors, have conversations with them about going back to college, and then refer them to a Reconnect advisor. A couple of weeks ago, our first partner is the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. A couple of weeks ago, we trained 200 of the staff from the American Job Centers across the state to be Reconnect ambassadors. They have people that come in every day that are potential reconnectors. They have people that come in that are not, but they have people that come in that are. And now they have basic information to answer basic questions, but then a referral point as well to get those reconnectors to a person. And they're not actually giving up a client. They're working with that reconnector as the Reconnect advisor is as well. So they're both holding on to that reconnector. We're also going to be working with the Tennessee Department of Transportation, to train their HR staff and their managers to be Reconnect ambassadors as well for the TDOT employees. And this is one thing at the state level that we're going to try to continue to do is build partnerships with state agencies that either provide services so they can share this information with the people they provide services to, or they can provide this information to their employees as well. So the 3 communities that launched in March are serving about 1,300 reconnectors. 124 have enrolled. I think these are pretty good numbers considering it was March when this started. And these are people that weren't currently engaged with higher education before. These are new people to the system. We expect, obviously, that it will grow when our 5 new communities launch. And that, of course, the number of enrolled, that's what we want to make sure that we up that number and the completion numbers. So a quick recap, Drive to 55 is our state's goal. Tennessee Reconnect is the adult portion of that. We want to develop a holistic kind of program, so we need to consider multiple stakeholders and multiple guiding strategies. We talked about Jan's life cycle and the programs that we've developed to feed that life cycle. And then I'm going to talk really briefly about what we've learned. We obviously don't have it completely figured out yet, but and a lot of it's trial and error, but we have to learn from what we have done, and we either have to change it or grow it, and we just have to really be willing to constantly innovate. Obviously, this takes human and financial resources. We have 3 staff at the state level that are working on coordinating these efforts, and of course there are numerous staff at the college level who are wearing many hats, doing many things that also do this as part of their work. This is true in Tennessee. Since about 2009, we've been really pushing a completion agenda. And so that's a lot of new programs and a lot of new processes, and the colleges get tired. And so we need to be respectful of the fact that that is the case, and that we're not just developing new programs all the time, but that we're trying to see what can either be integrated or tweaked, really, at the institution level, at the state level, and the system level. For us, at least, engagement is required at many levels. We have support of the governor. We have support of the state legislature. Our systems, we have 2 systems. Of course, the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, the institutions, and the community. So that's a big ecosystem, but they each contribute a different piece to the partnership. And I think everyone kind of rallying behind it has helped us be able to really focus on adults as an important population that we may not have paid as much attention to in the past. I'm sure many of you already know this, but you often get one chance with an employer, if that. If they don't like what they hear when you talk to them the first time, you may not be able to have a conversation with them again. So we're still working on this piece. We're still trying to figure out the best kind of partnership opportunities with employers that go beyond an institutional employer partnership that just provides training to the employer, but how do we really engage them in the bigger conversation? And community ownership is key. As a higher education commission, a higher education coordinating board, we had not worked with communities directly before. And this has been, I think this is where we're going to see the most success, because the engagement of the people that live where they live is so important. And they're getting people on board that are really interested. They're interested because they either think it's a good thing to do, or we've heard so many stories of people who said, you know what, I was an adult learner, and I want my business involved, or I want my chamber involved because of that. I mean, there are these personal stories that people have that really do connect them to this effort. So I'm going to stop talking now. And I think, are we taking questions? Okay. Yes.
How many staff are involved? How many people do you have working on this?
At the state level, we have 3.
And then where does your funding come from?
We have, that's a great question. Our funding comes from, we have a couple of grants from national foundations. And because this is part of a state initiative, last year we actually got state funding for it. So we have state funding, and we have foundation funding. And the community piece, part of what they do is look for resources to become sustainable. So hoping that we're going to have local support too, local dollars put into the effort. We're trying to find varied funding streams. Yes.
When you look at students who have gone to college for some time and then they, for whatever reason, stop, many of them, it could be because they owe money to the college or they have defaulted loans. How do you address that?
So that's absolutely. The defaulted loans piece of it, We have a sister agency, the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation, used to be a guarantee agency, and they're sort of shifting what they do. Now they're counseling students. So what we can do is, if we know or the Reconnect advisor knows that they're in default, they can immediately connect them to an actual person who can help them, of course, look through the National Student Loan Database, see what it is that they owe, but then get them on a plan, help them get on a plan to rehab their loans, for example.
Advertise and say that, because if I was a student and I knew that I owed money,
Mhm.
I'm like, no sense in me even trying to go back because
Right.
I owe money.
With the outreach effort that happened, the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation actually sent letters to those students to say, hey, we know this is happening, or we know you're in default, but it's not the end of the world. Let's talk about it. There are lots of other reasons you need to rehab this loan as well. So they were reaching out to the students as well. And then as far as the student owing money to the institution, I would love, if anybody has a good idea on that one, I would love to hear it. We have a state law and a system policy that says if a student owes $200 or more, then their transcripts are frozen. And I think that I would love to see what other states are doing to sort of address those issues. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to follow up with this question.
Okay.
So the state has funded 3 people at the state level to oversee this. What I heard you say was that every county or region has got a bevy of people, not just 1 or 2, but you've got like, I don't know,
Mhm.
anywhere 6, 7 out there doing this.
Yep.
And what I thought I heard you say was that it's both state funded and grant funded. And what you're hoping is that the communities are going to be able to find money in order to be able to support all of those people
Yep.
into the future. And it's not the American job, which for us is Michigan work. It's not them that's doing it, it's an actual separate group.
Correct. So let me kind of tick off the points that you raised there. So the state money helps us fund some positions. We also have money to do the startup funds for the communities. So we've provided them startup funds, and I'm sorry?
The state has or
The state has. The grant funding has helped us also provide the technical assistance to them. But they have startup money to do this work. A couple of things that we have planned is that we are, I'm hoping, going to be able to do sort of a weaning off where we're able to give them a little bit more money that they have to match throughout the next few years so that they're starting to get small amounts of money from community partners so that they get to the point where they are completely self-sustaining without state funding.
So it's almost like the state is running its own grant thing.
Yes.
Because that sounds an awful lot like grants are going. So you expect the state to fund this for another few years?
Yes, I do. I do. Yes. Yes.
How do you define adult learner for the research portion of this? What age?
25 and older. Yes. That's a great question too, of course, because that is the research part. But when we talk about serving the adults, that's not a cutoff for us at all. Yeah. Yes, sir.
When you were talking about the advisor role, which kind of sounds like literally a caseworker model.
Right.
You talked about being professional advisors. What does that mean?
So they're not academic advisors. The Reconnect advisors are not academic advisors. Much of the work that they do is pre-enrollment, and you're right, it's like a case management system almost, because some of the partners are human service providers in the area as well. So that is a lot of what they're doing. When we say professional advisors, and maybe we need to choose a different word, but they know about the enrollment processes and the admissions processes. They know what the student needs to do to get to that point to enroll, and they're like a resource center. So once that person has sort of cleared the way so that they can get back into school, their job is really to make sure that that person knows that there's someone there for them that is interested in their progress and wants to make sure that if they're struggling, that person is going to try to really keep them from just walking away, I think. So when I say professional, they're trained. We have competencies for the advisors. And so we try to train to the competencies quite a bit. I'm happy to share those with you if you're interested. Yes?
Do colleges have dedicated staff for adult learners?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, what was it?
Many of the colleges
They do.
have a dedicated staff that
They do. Sometimes that person, that's their job, and sometimes it's somebody with a different job who's been assigned that task. It was interesting when we were putting together the information for the website. One of the things that we added to each institutional profile was an adult student contact at the institution. And that was probably the piece that took the longest for us to get back from the institutions, because some of the institutions have been doing this for a long time, and they have processes in place for adults, and they have people, names, numbers to talk to. Others had to locate somebody in the institution that could do that. Yes. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about, I know that you also, and you didn't cover it in your presentation, the Tennessee Promise for high school students.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how that program and this programming has impacted enrollment at colleges?
Yes, so our enrollment, and I'm not going to have the exact numbers, the enrollment has gone up significantly at community colleges, significantly. The enrollment at four-year institutions has gone down. We don't know. We're interested to see over the years sort of what that pattern looks like. We have fewer students taking out student loans. There's like a 20% drop in number of students taking out student loans in Tennessee this year. So it's in its infancy, and we're really kind of watching to see. But yes, it's impacted. Now, of course, and I'm sure this is the case in Michigan too, but our adult enrollment has gone down since the economy has gotten better. So we're trying to get more adults to come into. One of the things that I should mention here, and I know it's not the same in Michigan, but the way that state monies are distributed to institutions in Tennessee is based on a formula, and it's an outcomes-based funding formula. And adults and low-income students are worth more. So there's a premium on the progress of adult learners and Pell-eligible adult learners. It's an 80% premium. So that means that an adult that hits certain progression points and also the graduation, they don't have to get all the way to graduation, but hitting certain progression points, while a traditional age student is, worth $1, an adult is worth $1.80. If that's a low income adult, they're worth $2, I believe. So it's a recognition of the fact that more resources are needed to support adult learners, so that as they progress, that's how the funding formula works. Yes?
So I'm interested in prior learning assessment, credit for prior learning, and we talked a little bit about our military project that's coming up for military equivalencies, but whenever I talk to Kale, they always point me toward Tennessee for what you guys have done with PLA.
Yep.
Can you talk a little more specifically about that work?
Yeah.
And very specifically, if you can give us any advice on transferability of PLA credits. This is something that comes up a lot for our community colleges who might be interested in doing more work around that, but are concerned for the students that those credits might not transfer when they leave.
Yes. Okay. So 2011 or 12, we sort of embarked on a statewide PLA effort, and it was to develop standards around prior learning assessment. And what we did is we invited all of the colleges to designate a representative. They didn't have to participate, but we opened it up for any institution that wanted to participate, public and private not-for-profits. And they came together. By the time, I think by the end of the whole process, 18 months later, we had 45 people on our committee, and we had people that were supportive and we had people that weren't supportive. And what we did, our process was basically the first meeting, we said, what are the obstacles that you see? What are the problems that you see? And they kind of all grouped together in about 5 areas. And then we divided everyone up into those areas. And we said, together, you all sketch out what you think the standards should be, if you think there should be standards. We brought them back to the group. This wasn't a Tennessee Higher Education Commission wrote the standards and then the institutions put the stamp of approval on it. They had a representative or multiple representatives. So 18-month process, we now had state PLA standards. But again, we are a coordinating board, we're not a governing board. We can't make the institutions do this. The systems, one of the systems, adopted the standards as policy. So for the community colleges and the regional 4-year institutions, they would adhere to these policies. Within the standards, there is a transferability section. So in Tennessee, we have the Tennessee Transfer Pathways, and the guarantee was that if prior learning assessment credit was applied to a pathway, if it fulfilled a requirement within the pathway, and that student then transferred from a community college to a 4-year school, that 4-year school had to honor the entire pathway. So that's how that transferability worked.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
So the question, when you were talking about the employer partnership and the role of the advisor and the employers, one thing you mentioned is about the advisor can give employers updates on student progress.
Right.
Is that, I'm assuming that's in the situation if the employer is actually sponsoring?
Yeah. Yes.
And,
Yes.
and even in that situation, how's that going? Concerns, red flags?
Well, I'll say that we haven't gotten that far yet. So this is the model, that's the model that the Graduate Network has, really allows that kind of partnership. We haven't gotten that deep into it up to this point. And I think in order to protect the student, I think really that we would encourage an aggregate report, really, of generally these are your employees that are involved. We have stages. We have the inquiry stage, a pre-enrollment stage, and an enrollment stage. We could say, you have X employees that were in pre-enrollment, now they're in enrollment. To try to keep them up to speed on how their investment really is working out, but not give a lot of personal information to the employer about the employee and their personal struggles or anything like that. Yes.
Well, I have another question.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit more? I saw on the portal that you had a section for veterans and military service members. Obviously, I have a vested interest in that. Can you talk a little bit more about what you have done around that, or what kind of resources you're pointing those students towards?
So that, I will admit, is probably the area we need to work on the most. What we wanted to do was put some information in one place for the veterans that were interested or that go to that site. We didn't want them to come to the site and not have anything that was really geared towards them. We talk a lot about their benefits, what they can access. We talk about also the state programs that exist for them. We talk a lot about not prior learning assessment credit in this way, but we talk about their ability to get a joint services transcript, for example. There are some veterans that aren't aware of the joint services transcript, so we're trying to tell them that this is available and something that they can use. Something else that we've done is we're looking into prior learning assessment as it concerns veterans and service members and how we engage the institutions more in that. So that's something that we're working towards as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Meeting that we had yesterday morning, one of the things we talked about in a move towards having early alert systems, the institution or the college gets alerted to a student not doing well in a course, and then they find out from that student, if they get in touch with them, they find out from that student that the barrier they're experiencing is not academically related at all.
Mm-hmm.
So transportation, childcare, housing, food security, cash assistance, you name it.
Yeah.
So this seems like a model, the Reconnectors
Mm-hmm.
and ambassadors seems like a model where when you have this community-based model, those are problems that colleges can't solve themselves.
Right.
And so the connection to those services, has there been an increase in the use of benefits? Do you expect there to be? Are the benefits there that are available to students? So we, certainly when reconnectors are there and we can talk to those people, that's great, but if you have no solution for them,
Right.
there's still no solution for that.
Right, exactly. So, yes, and this is, to answer your question, that is a really big goal of really the whole Reconnect community effort, is that if somebody is struggling because they have transportation issues, then that Reconnect advisor and that Reconnect community, part of what they do is they sort of amass a list of things that are available. So they may know that, you know, this American Job Center might have some funds available for someone to get to class or something like that. And in terms of usage of other services, what we're doing, so our first real state partnership with the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, we're adding pieces to the Salesforce system so that we can track who referred that reconnector to them. And then the American Job Centers are going to start tracking what that person is also receiving. So I think we'll be able to tie some of those resources together. And I'm hoping that when we talk to the Department of Human Services and others, that we'll be able to sort of track what kinds of services are being utilized the most.
Great.
Okay. Well, oh, yes.
Let's see, of course you're tracking connection and completion, things like that, but what are the other important metrics that you're needing to pay attention to along the way, and how are you communicating how things are going?
So that's a good question. And what we're actually going to be doing is, well, let me back up. We're going to look at, we're going to track race. We're going to track other demographic information. We have equity gaps in Tennessee, which I'm sure exist here as well. We need to dig into those a little bit more. We're going to look at, since we have a life cycle model, sort of inquiry, pre-enrollment, and enrollment, we want to look at those that are pre-enrolled, not yet in an institution, how long they're there, and why they're there for so long, so we can dig into some of those barriers to really understand them a little bit more. And then in enrollment, how long are they there? How long is it taking them to graduate? And if it's taking them a long time, we want to dig into why it's taking them a long time. So we all understand the barriers, right, that adults face, but we want to really, really get into the barriers in this community in particular. Is it that, you know, transportation is hard because it's a really rural area and the closest college is 45 minutes away and they don't have internet access? I mean, so we really want to dig into those barriers. And I know that's kind of a broad statement, but that's what we're hoping to get out of that data. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.